Isaac Carr with CCSK Law, coming to you live to talk to you about a newest update with the PPP loans. All right, for small businesses, this is underneath the CARES Act that was passed last Friday, and I've been giving you intermittent updates about what's going on. I have a couple more. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the PPP loan versus the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan versus some tax credits that might be available out there, all right, and how they can work together. First off, is to say that previously, I was first under the impression that there might be some way for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan and the PPP to work together on this. But then I was informed that, you know what, they might not be able to be applied for both. However, I've been given the most recent update with this was from somebody who is actually an SBA director in Vermont and did an interview. Her name is Darcy Carter, and this is what she had to say on it. You can get both loans, and we recommend that businesses consider each program to see what their best option is. There are complements that they can do to one another. So this is what she continued on to say, that they are very different, and each business needs to consider their own situation in terms of payroll and other obligations that they have that are necessary. Some obligations may be eligible under the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, but not under the PPP. You want to be sure that you want the payroll and related expenses under the PPP to be forgiven, and don't use the EIDL loan for the same period of payroll. In fact, you cannot use both of those for the same payroll. If you have applied for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, that's the one that's through the SBA online portal. If you've applied for those funds and they provide you with up to like a $10,000 grant as well as funds over top of that, you had to fill out a lot of forms. That right there, those funds cannot be used for payroll if you also apply for them under the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan. That right there, those loans under the PPP are run through the bank and they are for your payroll. Yes, you can use the PPP funds for other qualified expenses such as rent or interest on your mortgage or your utilities, but fundamentally it's for your payroll, and that's the primary driver behind this. So when you're considering which one of these to do between the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan and the PPP, what I've been advising clients is to first take a look at your payroll. Your payroll does include yourself and any independent contractors you have, along with your employees. You're going to take 2019, last year's total payroll. You're going to add all of those costs, including your state and local taxes, including group health insurance, including any matching funds for retirement plans. Add up all of those expenses. Do not include your federal taxes. The federal taxes that you withheld, those are not included in this total. But you add up the rest of those up to $100,000 for each employee and yourself. You can't just claim for yourself over $100,000. Add those up for the total. For you get a 2019 total, divide that by 12 to get a monthly average, and then multiply that by 2.5, and that's what you can qualify for. But once again, that is just based off of your payroll. That's different for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That right there may be used for a number of expenses. Just make sure that you're not applying for payroll under both. All right, I have a client, for example, who owns some hotels. Last year, he didn't make a ton of money personally off of that, but he definitely has some high mortgage costs. Under the PPP, you can't get mortgage costs, and the amount that he can qualify for is just based on payroll, so the amount that he made himself. Well, these early years of the hotel, he's not getting paid a whole lot. So it's going to be much better for him to apply for this underneath the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan to really offset that mortgage. He can still apply for that PPP, but it just might not be very much. All right? So the other difference here is that the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, it's not forgivable. Now, there is that first $10,000 that could be considered a grant, but overall, that is a 30-year loan, up to a 30-year loan. You might not get a full 30 years, but it's up to a 30-year loan at a 3.75% interest rate if you're a for-profit business and a 2.75% interest rate if you're a nonprofit, which is a pretty good rate. And if you do get it over a 30-year, that's a really good loan, one you're unlikely to see in any other aspect of business, except for the PPP. The PPP is a loan as well, but it's got a couple big differences. The first difference is that it's over a 2-year period. Now, the text of the law says it can be up to 10 years, but the Treasury Department came out with a with an article that looks pretty hard line to say it's going to be a 2-year loan. The other difference is the interest rate. The text of the law for the PPP says up to 4%. However, this is what was mind-boggling. The Treasury said that it's 0.5%, 0.5% of an interest rate. You're not going to find that ever again. That right there is something that is significant, and it's an amazing rate on a loan. The other big difference is the loan forgiveness aspect of the PPP. The loan forgiveness aspect, if you follow certain criteria, basically continue to pay your people at least 75% of what you were paying them before and pay the same number of people, you get to have that portion forgiven. But you got to spend it within that 8-week period to have it forgiven. Otherwise, you'll end up remaining with that loan. And you can still only spend it on qualified expenses, which does not include your mortgage. It does include interest on mortgage, and it does include rent, and does include utilities, but you can't use it to pay for past debts, just the interest on those debts. All right. So those are the big differences between those two. You can still go for both of them. I'm glad we got that clarification. And then there's one other clarification that had come out, and that's about the tax credits. Underneath the CARES Act, there is a section that talks about tax credits for employers. And so I'm going to read what Senator Grassley and the Republican Finance Committee had answered about how the tax credits for employers work with these other programs such as the PPP, and about how much you're going to get for that. So real quick here, how much is the credit and how is it calculated? Their response was the credit is equal to 50% of the qualified wages paid by the employer with respect to each employee. So up to 50% of the qualified wages. The amount of qualified wages with respect to any employee for all calendar quarters in 2020 cannot exceed 10,000. So you can't get over 10,000. In other words, there's a $5,000 total cap on the credit per eligible employee for the 2020 tax year. That's a $5,000 cap on a credit, but it's equal to 50% of the qualified wages for each employee. Now, is that credit available if the business receives one of the new SBA loans under the CARES Act? No. All right, the credit is not available to employers receiving a small business interruption loan. That's the PPP. That's the Paycheck Protection Plan. They call it in the Senate bill the Small Business Interruption Loan. Under the SBA's Paycheck Protection Program, under the CARES Act. So you cannot get it if you've gotten the PPP. There might be circumstances where it is going to be beneficial for you to claim one or the other. I'll say with regard to that tax credit, that might be a specific question for your accountant or CPA or tax advisor to give you that information on that. So, all right, those are my updates that I wanted to give you for the PPP. For small businesses and sole proprietors, the application submission starts tomorrow for these banks. So you want to get in line because it's first come, first serve. And for independent contractors and qualified self-employed individuals, it's going to be April 10th. But again, you want to get in as soon as possible. If we look at the big picture, $350 billion is not actually that much when you're talking about as many businesses that are around and how much they're going to apply for. So you want to get in as soon as possible to an administrator that is a bank. You start with your trusted bank, the ones that you know well. If you can find an SBA lender, so a bank that does SBA loans already, that's going to be probably your next best bet. And then if you do have a different bank that is not SBA, but they are getting qualified to be a regulated lender, they can apply as well once they're approved. All right, so go ahead and talk with your bank or your administrator and start that process as soon as possible if you're going for the PPP. If you're going for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, you apply online at the SBA website. And then these tax credits are the last thing that you want to talk to your accountant or CPA about. All right, once again, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Feel free to email me at isaac@ccskaw.com. That's isaac@ccskaw.com. Here at CCSK Law, we're here to give you the latest updates with regard to everything that's going on with the coronavirus, whether that's how the unemployment might affect your bankruptcy, that's to the small business administration and what kind of funds are available. We're going to keep you updated as if Indiana makes some funds available for you small businesses. I'm keeping up to date on all that as well. And so we're going to keep you in the loop with everything that's going on with the newest information that we have to make sure that you're well informed. All right. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any comments, and we will talk to you again soon.